Welcome in this quick introduction to scoping. That's what we call the process of deciding which of your legal entities need to be taken into account into your B Corp certification journey, if you will. So you might have legal entities spread around Europe. You might have a sales entity somewhere. You might have a sister entity or parent entity. There's rules for how to go about this. So B-Lab has guidelines for how to certify these kinds of structures. So we're going to look at some of them in a bit more detail. Just to remind you, what exactly is a B Corp? And I know we keep reminding you of this, but there's a little bit of a different emphasis every time. So certified B Corps are companies verified by B-Lab to meet high standards of social and environmental performance. So the key word here is companies. So B-Lab only certifies complete and distinct companies. Complete and distinct meaning complete companies in the sense that we do not certify company divisions. We don't certify, for example, marketing division of a certain group or a company. We also don't certify brands, but we certify companies. So, and distinct is related to that. So the company needs to be sufficiently distinct, so set apart from other companies. If there's a group of sister companies and there's overlap in terms of operations or branding or employees who are working for 3 of the sister companies at the same time, that might not be possible to certify one of those companies separately, because in that sense, B-Lab deems that it is not a complete and distinct company from its sister entities. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here, but I want to emphasize the importance of this definition that B-Lab certifies complete and distinct companies. Luckily, we have some rules of thumb that we can share with you, which can make things a little bit easier in terms of determining the scope of your certification. So determining which group and which entities need to be taken into account. We're going to walk through a couple of these rules of thumb quite quickly. We'll have another resource that goes into a little bit more depth, but I want to touch upon it here already by means of an example. So on the right here, you'll find a organizational structure chart, which has a fairly straightforward company chart. You'll see 5 different BV's, so 5 different corporate entities, which are related in some way by branding and ownership. So this is how B-Lab decides which companies need to be in scope. So the first rule of thumb, if we want to certify, in this case, XYZ Benelux BV, the first rule of thumb that we would need to keep in mind is that all majority-owned subsidiaries are always in scope. So majority-owned, of course, being more than 50%. Well, actually, I'm realizing it should be 50 or more percent. So 50% is also majority-owned. And in this case, it would, at the very least, include XYZ Belgium BV and XYZ Nederland BV, because those are both owned for 80 and 100% respectively. So they should definitely be in scope, because XYZ Benelux BV, the company pursuing certification, has complete control over these entities, and they should be considered part of this company. So far, so good, right? That makes sense. All entities with shared branding or operations should also usually be taken into account of the scope. So in this case, that means that XYZ Lux, which stands for Luxembourg in this case, would also need to be taken into account. Why? Because you might say, well, they only have a 25% ownership relationship. But that's true, but they also seem to use the same trading name. So they use the same branding name, right? They also are called XYZ something something. And we can assume, based on this structure chart, and we would always be in contact with the company to make sure that our assumptions are correct, that this Luxembourgish entity is also trading with the XYZ brand, and for that reason should be taken into account of the scope of this certification. Because if we were to certify the other entities, then Luxembourgish clients or customers would be very confused about whether or not the Luxembourgish entity of this company is also certified. So it's all about preventing brand confusion. Finally, but definitely not least importantly, non-operational or financial holding companies are recommended, or rather to be requested to be in scope always as well, especially if they serve no other purpose than to hold the shares in the operational companies below them. So be aware of that B-Lab requires financial, non-operational holding companies to be in scope as well. Finally, there's a bit of a special case which we run into quite often, is that companies want to certify independently from their parent company. And this is understandable, but is still bound by a couple of rules and guidelines that we have. I won't go into too much detail here, but essentially what it comes down to is that we, as B-Lab, together with the company, need to establish that your company is indeed complete and distinct enough from your parent company. So in this case, B-Lab cannot certify companies that have a certain degree of overlap or dependence on their parent entity. Similarly, companies whose parent companies have something to say, for example, have a big influence on the purchasing of the subsidiary, that might be a red flag, for example. We have a couple of example cases in our community that have been deemed complete and distinct enough from their parent entity. So you may be familiar with the fact that Ben & Jerry's is a Unilever subsidiary. Ben & Jerry's, if I'm not mistaken, even certified before being acquired by Unilever. But it has been deemed by B-Lab's responsible teams that Ben & Jerry's is sufficiently complete and distinct from their parent because they have independent management teams, independent financial reporting. Unilever doesn't have that much power over Ben & Jerry's at all, actually. So that's why Ben & Jerry's can be a B Corp separately from Unilever. Same goes for Nespresso and Nestlé, because again, Nespresso for all intents and purposes is an independent company. Yes, 100% of the shares is held by Nestlé, so the financial relationship is undeniable, of course, but B-Lab has done its due diligence in extensive contact with these companies and many other companies to make sure that indeed those subsidiaries operate complete and distinct from their parent company. For more details about scoping, this is about the depth that I want to go into right now. We have a lovely webpage in which there are many more rules and guidelines laid out, and there's other sources that we have as well that take you a little bit deeper into this. But I wanted to give you a quick rundown nonetheless. I want to wish you good luck for now with working on this, and if you are ever in doubt about any of this, you know where to find us.